Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the funeral service. We ask for those that have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Officiating is Rabbi Baruch Hertz. All you.
Rabbi. Maybe his name is wrong. Make sure it's mine. Mizmor David, Adonai Ro'eh Lo Echsar, Ben Ezdeshe Yabitzeini, Al Mei Menuchis in Aleini, Nafshi Yeshovi Yancheni, Maglit Tzedek L'man Shemoi, Gam Ki Elech, Begeitz HaMaves La'ir Raki Atu Modi, Shiftecha Mashantecha Hemi Nachmuni, Tareich Lefanai Shulchan Neged Seirei, Dishanta V'Shem Reishi Kaisi Revaya, Achtoi V'Chesi Lefunik Hoi Meichayai, V'Shafti B'Veis Adonai L'Erech Yomim. A song of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. You are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in a full view of adversaries. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue all days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. We're here to pay a respect, covered achrein, a final respect to Muriel Finkel, Maida ben Doiv Ber Halevi. Even though it's a very hard moment, a reflection, someone who's so dear and precious to us is no longer with us. But at the same time, it's a moment where we reflect on the beautiful life she lived together with her beloved husband, Bernie. May his soul rest in peace. In this week's Torah portion, it's Matos Maseh within the 3 weeks. And Matos Maseh means, Matos is the word translation in Hebrew, is a staff. Maseh means a journey. When I think about Maida, I'll use the Hebrew name, I think about someone, on one hand, was so solid and so strong, and at the same time, at every journey in her life, was always positive and successful. You know, in my experience, I got to know Maida through the Finkel family. I knew Bernie well, Al Shalom. I knew Phil and Eileen, and subsequently got to meet the rest of her wonderful children, Cal and Norm, and was able to see a special lady, a lady who raised such a beautiful family. Over the years, I've met some of the amazing grandchildren. I've even met the great-grandchildren. And you ask, how does someone have such a schus, such a merit? So I'll tell you one thing which I heard a while back, that she might have taught, was in a public school, and was taught gym, but was a teacher in public school. And, we all care for our family, and she was successful. Baruch Hashem, all her children, accomplished people, not only in the fields in the workforce, but accomplished in general, strong community members, giving families, the pillars of Chicago, I mean broad Chicago and Skokie. But the point is that that's an accomplishment in its own right. But what I heard once was that she even would encourage her goal in public school was that every child should succeed. And she was there for even the children who were not necessarily the people who somebody always would give them the benefit of the doubt. She was there to make sure that they were successful and they will actually accomplish what they have to accomplish. And that says a lot about the person. That says that we're here to make a difference in the world, and we're not only here for ourselves. We all know her as being a happy and positive person, always with a smile. I mean, the couple together we always knew that it was always with a smile, with a simcha. I remember just one memory. I was walking in Park Plaza and down the narrow hallway, the new hallway, and down there's walking with Bernie and Muriel and Muriel, and she walks down there, and I asked them, how is it going? And they said, this place is great, it's absolutely fabulous. And I'll tell you what struck me at that moment. Now, many people get older, and they sort of take life, and they, Baruch Hashem, had a full life, a life of many successes, and then they say, life is just a little hard, aging is not easy, but she had that personality of positivity. This positive personality was so special, you taught the family what it means to be the simcha and smile, always with a smile. I never saw, you can always, whoever met them, always positive, always with a smile. I know that she loved her children and her grandchildren and great-grandchildren dearly, wouldn't miss an event, was always there. Her schedule, her calendar was full with not even the birthdays, obviously, anniversaries, but even a small little party in school or some accomplishment. She was always, I know that. But it was always with a smile. It wasn't like they had to go there, an obligation, but it was with a smile and something positive. Today, we're standing in a moment which is, it's 3 weeks. We know the temple was destroyed. The Beis HaMikdash, our sages tell us, because of lack of love, Avat Yisrael, there was missing the Avat Yisrael, the peace, the clarity, and there was sometimes baseless hatred. We know when it comes to be united, that's always the most important thing. And I want to say is something which is obvious, but it has to be said, that that this is an era which no longer, this generation is no longer with us, and it's a special generation, which is really remarkable. And when I say special, we think about it, raised in Chicago, a family from Chicago, in America, I don't even know, and raised such a beautiful family, so traditionally and Yiddishkeit connected. It's just, think about it for a second. And it was being here so many years. We talk now on the struggles that was going on. The struggles then were much greater and almost impossible, and there was a tide and a wave. But yet there were certain individuals who had that schus and had the merit of just standing what's important and giving values to the children and being just good people. And you see the blessings today of the beautiful mishpacha she raised. At the same time, when the parents, unfortunately no longer with us, a new generation, and there's such a wonderful family, I encourage, and it's an obvious thing, the family should stay, v'achdus, be united together. It's a time of Avos Yisrael, we have to talk about it, because it's a new era, a new generation, so it's a time to bring, the family should stay as connected, and should work together, and continue on this beautiful family, which is contributing so much, not only in their own lives, but also to the community. So, as we recognize the family name, I just want to acknowledge obviously the children, but the grandchildren. I mentioned before the children, Philip, Cal, doctors, and Dr. Philip, Dr. Cal, and Norm, and Sarah, and Ira, and Talia, and Ethan, and Ari, and Donnie, and Brian, and Rebecca, and the many, many grandchildren. But the reason I'm mentioning the children was because it was a very close family. It's a close family. Everyone's together. I see every simcha, everyone's together. I do want to also recognize who's here today, Morris' sister, Renee Horowitz, and the brother-in-law who had the privilege of spending time in California. We had breakfast together. Uncle Hershey, as I knew, the family calls you uncle, but you definitely have that beautiful smile and energy. We sat together in Los Angeles. You should only come for simchas. The loss is great, but yet, when you think about the accomplishments that you did in your lifetime, that's so special and so unique and so great what one person is able to do in a short amount of time, the years that God gave you from a gift in this world. It says that God gives the world as a gift, and what we make out of the world is a gift to God. You definitely have utilized your life and created this gift. I'm sure up there, your Lamaila up there, Neshama, as the soul ascends with your beloved husband, maybe running a radio program up there, I'm not sure, but some good energy. I'm sure you're making people happy there and bringing simcha and watching it high, the beautiful simcha and joy of the family. The family also was so dedicated. I saw a tremendous amount. I do want to mention, besides being wonderful people, the whole Finkel mishpacha, I saw something which has to be always mentioned, even though it should be obvious, the kibbud avayim, the tremendous respect that the children, both the sons and the daughter-in-laws, to Eileen, Hindi, and Leslie, had for the parents, that they're always there available. It was not even a question. They were there for them. The parents were there in return, but that's something very special. May the neshama, as you say, have an aliyah, and all the mitzvahs and good deeds that you've done. And I encourage everyone to do some special mitzvah in memory. We're going to hear now in this order from the families. Let's say the first name from Phil, Cal, Norm, the three amazing sons, and from three of the grandchildren who represent the rest of the grandchildren, Ethan, Bin, and Ira.
Thank you, Rabbi Hertz, for those beautiful words. Let me say that everyone here who knew her, if they were all given the opportunity to come up here, I think we'd be here all week. Mom was born on May 12th, 1929, on Mother's Day, the 3rd of Iyar, on the west side of Chicago, on South Hamlin, just 2 blocks from her dad. Like Dad, she was very athletic. She graduated with a degree in phys ed from DePaul University. She had a really great sense of humor and laugh, so I have to share a few stories. While she was at DePaul, she played the French horn. She was in the middle of eating a hamburger when it came her turn to play unexpectedly. Needless to say that was the end of any musical aspirations. She was not shy about getting what she wanted. Her best acquisition came when she saw our dad standing at the bus stop. Yeah. And bumped into him on purpose, That eventually led to them enjoying 68 wonderful years of marriage. Her loud, hearty laugh was quite embarrassing to us as kids in the movie theater. She taught gym and library in the Chicago public schools for many years. Her kids adored her, and she adored them. She was always loud and passionate about her sports cheering when the Cubs won, and yelling they stink when they lost. Her and Dad would come to all the games and continue to go to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren's games. I remember during one of Sarah's basketball games, she didn't like the calls, so she hobbled across the court to yell at the ref. That's how passionate she was. Growing up at a time when we would play around the neighborhood, when we could play around the neighborhood, we all remember with love how she would whistle, telling us it was time for dinner. We could hear from weeks away, from blocks away. She was a very supportive mother. I remember when I was in college and dental school, The few times I got a good grade, I couldn't wait to call her, and because I knew how excited she would get when she would hear that. She always had to be the first to an event and the last to leave. Often she'd be dressed for a wedding 3 hours early while Dad was still in the backyard pulling out weeds. I'll always appreciate the warm religious upbringing we were given, and we saw how Mom loved, respected, and cared for her parents, and she deserved the same. She was happiest surrounded by family and friends and doing all the cooking for the holidays. She was a true matriarch of the family, and she was blessed with 9 grandchildren. And last Friday had her 20th great-grandchild. She was never one to miss a family event, be it a wedding, bar mitzvah, basketball game, or even a kindergarten graduation. From an early age, she taught us manners. Always say please and thank you. She, not Jerry Seinfeld, invented the day after thank you. Well, any Seinfeld? Okay. After a simcha she attended, she would call the family the next day to thank them, wish them mazel tov, and say how beautiful the event was. My mom's father used to say, it's just as easy to be nice as not nice. And Mom was always smiling and friendly to everybody. After COVID, her kisses at Park Plaza turned to waves, but everybody knew her, loved her. We're so touched and comforted by all the calls and texts I've received by family, coworkers, and friends who have such fond memories of Mom. I must take a minute on behalf of the family to thank Alice, who cared for Mom and Dad like they were her own parents. We will forever be grateful to you. I was blessed to have been raised by 2 wonderful parents, and I thank God for giving them to me as long as He did. When we mourn the loss of a loved one, we give them nachas by taking to heart their life's motto and trying to emulate them. Let us continue to learn and do mitzvos in the merit of our mom, Meta Bas Dov Ber Halevi, and may her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren continue to make us proud, to make her proud. We love you and we'll miss you.
I think I'm going to speak for Cal, but these are his words, and I'm just going to help him out. Also, I apologize if I'm repeating some of what Phil said. It just shows that we speak the
We
truth,
didn't have time to review everything with everybody, but we had the same
even though
feelings.
maybe some of the small details are might be a little different. Again, these are Cal's words. I would like to begin by publicly acknowledging and thanking my mother's caregiver, Alice, for her years of devotion to both my mother and my father. Her compassion and devotion knew no bounds, and she went above and beyond to ensure my parents' health, safety, and well-being. We are also appreciative of Alice's husband and family, who all helped in my mother's care. Ben Zoma states in Pirkei Avot, Perek 4, Ezehu ha'ashir hasameach bechelko. Who is rich? The one who is happy with his lot. My mother exemplified this Jewish principle. Although she was never rich in material ways, I never once knew her to complain about what she couldn't or didn't have. She never worried about herself. She was happy with all the simple pleasures of life, and she appreciated the riches that God gave her, her family, their health, and their well-being. Her happiness depended on her relationships with her family and friends, and never with her own physical possessions. There's another lesson taught in Pirkei Avot that makes me think of my mother. Shammai says, Havei mikabel et kol adam b'sefer panim yafot. Receive every person with a cheerful face and smile. My mother's laughter, warmth, and friendliness were infectious. She lit up a room with her smile. My mother loved people. Even when sick or not feeling well, if people were around, she was animated and lively. She loved our friends, and anytime she saw them, she would, in her words, take them around. She was a hugger and a kisser, and so genuinely interested in others that everyone loved her. She let you know she loved you, including doctors she went to. She would bring them home-baked sweets and always show them her appreciation. She literally had a smile and a nice word for everyone. She was unusual for her time. As a young girl, she loved sports, both as a spectator and as a participant. She complained that her friends were boring because when she was single, it was difficult to find girlfriends who were interested in playing tennis, bowling, and going skating with her. I'm going to leave out the part of the French horn. She attended DePaul University and majored in physical education and gym. My mother was very beautiful, although that never seemed to dawn on her. And many of the guys she met in school wanted to date her. When she refused, they all thought she had a boyfriend, but she would never date anyone that wasn't Jewish. We were also putting in about accidentally bumping into our father. I can take, okay. After meeting my father once through friends, she saw him on the bus, and being interested in him, she accidentally
Bumped them together.
to get his attention. My father's parents loved her so much that while the engagement ring was being fitted at the jeweler, his mother, my bubby, went to pick up the ring on her own to move things along more quickly. My mother taught in the Chicago public schools for many years, and she got along with everyone she worked with, no matter how different their backgrounds. She was a lifelong and avid baseball fan and loved going to the Cubs games in the summer. We have pictures of her with her grandsons vending at Wrigley Field, and she loved that, seeing them and when she attended the games. I remember as a child, when we moved to Skokie, my mother did not have a car. She would walk us to our baseball games at Thillen Stadium on Devon, all the way from Dempster and McCormick, so we could play. That's around 4 miles each way. I remember the time we were ready to go somewhere and my mother was playing with a paddle ball outside. We have a movie of her hitting a ball over 1,000 times, only stopping when her arm started to hurt. She loved going to her grandchildren's sporting events. She was so into the games that even though she was a woman who rarely criticized anyone, she would shout at the referee and coaches when she had advice to give. I can still vividly remember her reactions and body language during my son's wrestling matches. My mom went to Eitan's last match, and while he was being pinned to the mat, my mom was sitting in the bleachers near him, pushing and yelling, "Flip him! Flip him!" My mother, along with my father, almost never missed one single event in our family, whether it was school performances, sports, holiday celebrations, you name it. We have been so blessed to have had her with us and to help us celebrate every single life event. She took so much joy in entertaining her family on holidays and always made sure to prepare everything that everyone liked. Her signature dishes were brisket, meatballs, mashed potatoes, blend souffle, not together, spinach quiche, and lemon squares. No one ever left her table unless they were stuffed. Mostly what I remember about all those years of get-togethers is the laughter and the fun. My father would tell his Yiddish jokes, replete with his Yiddish accent, and my mother would laugh and laugh. My mother, along with my father, was active at Hillel Torah, the Academy, Skokie Valley Synagogue, and Hapoelei Mizrahi. She and my dad were very dedicated to the religious institutions that nurtured our family and passionate about Jewish education and the state of Israel. My mother was an exceptional daughter, daughter-in-law, wife, mother, and mother-in-law. Hindi, that's me, used to say when we got married that if I didn't behave, she would run home to my mother. My mother didn't like to say anything negative, and sometimes even when we asked for her opinion, she hesitated to express herself for fear of offending anyone. My mother was an amazing wife and a true Eshet Chayil. She loved when my father led services for the high holidays and had so much pleasure from his tunes and songs, especially when he sang my Yiddish Shemama to her. She was so proud of her boys, as she called me and my brothers, and had tremendous nachas from her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. My mother's 20th great-grandchild was born just this week, thank God. We will be celebrating the bar mitzvah of her oldest great-grandchild in a short time, in Yirtzeh Hashem. It is hard to imagine future celebrations without her, but her memory will live on in all of us. I am forever grateful and appreciative to my mother for all the sacrifices she made for me, for all she taught me, and for her unconditional and limitless love. May her memory be a blessing to all who knew her. She will be forever missed.
Dear Mom, so much of who I am is because of you. You somehow knew when to swoop in and save me, and when to step back and to let me learn from my own mistakes. And that made me resilient. You've wiped my tears, cheered me on, and told me that I'm capable of anything in the world. And that has made me confident. You've loved me unconditionally, even when it was difficult, and that has made me strong. You're my biggest supporter, my wisdom, my reality check, my incredible mother. Mom, thank you for all you have done for me and so many others all of these years. Happy Mother's Day. Love, Norm. Mother's Day, May 14th, my last Mother's Day card to my mom. No one in this universe has had a greater influence over my life than my mother. She, above anyone else, shaped who I am as a father, grandfather, husband, son, and friend. She has, by example, influenced the way I view the world more than any human being. My mom was all about family and about doing for others, not for herself. She was the most selfless and other-centered person I have ever known. Just as the sun rises every morning, I knew, my brothers knew, every family member knew, and every friend of my mother's knew that Muriel Finkel would be there for them, no matter what, rain or shine, thick or thin. She devoted her entire life caring for her family and helping others. Her love and devotion was simply unconditional. My mom was our rock. She was always our greatest source of inspiration, encouragement, and support. She used to say, "You can do whatever you set your mind to, and we'll back you all the way." And she meant it. She was our biggest fan. She was the person whose smile always gave me the impetus to go the extra mile. I still have the many dollars that she gave me over the years before a trial, a test, or a medical procedure on which she wrote, "Good luck, I love you, Mom." I carry one with me wherever I go, and still do to this day. My mom had great instincts and common sense. She knew people and what made them tick. I was never too old to ask for, and she was never too old to give. Sage and practical advice. Her guidance and support did not end in our childhood. When I opened my eyes after appendix surgery in my 50s, who do you think was staring over me asking, "Hey, Norm, how do you feel?" When Leslie and I contracted food poisoning and spent 2 days sick as dogs, who do you think made a surprise visit and schlepped up 3 flights of apartment stairs with a carpet cleaner and disinfectant? Raising 3 boys, including twins, born within 3 years of each other, was certainly not an easy task. But my mom did it with grace, love, and incredible patience. She loved her boys. and everyone could see it. For those who are familiar with the book Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, my mother loved and cared for us with all of her heart, regardless of how many windows we broke, and regardless of how many trips to the ER she made after we shoved marbles in each other's noses or stuck Q-tips in each other's ears, just to name a few. My mom didn't just talk the talk, she walked the walk. There was nothing that she didn't teach my brothers and me that she didn't live by herself. My brothers and I saw it, respected it, and followed it. She taught us about commitment, about doing the right thing, how to treat people, and how to be humble in every single thing that we did. My mom was a philosopher of sorts. Her philosophies about life and how to conduct yourself are legendary. She often started conversations with, "I always tell my boys." As part of her many well-known philosophies about parenthood, she used to say, "You know, you gotta teach kids. They don't naturally know the right thing to do. You gotta teach them when they're young." I didn't fully appreciate this wise piece of advice until I became a father. And I found myself telling my own kids at a young age that going to a shiva, for example, was not about your comfort level, but about doing the right thing for others. My mom's teachings are now being passed down from generation to generation. My mom could and did do it all. She was an amazing woman. She was a very traditional woman, and yet, in so many ways, she was ahead of her time. She worked as a Chicago public school teacher for many years, even when she could barely climb the stairs because of her bad knees. She was involved in our synagogue, in our schools. She kept our home. She hosted all kinds of family events and holidays, and she never, ever missed an important event for her kids or her grandchildren. My mom was also very organized and punctual, as you've heard. She used to complain that her lists had lists. You could always count on my mom to remember birthdays and anniversaries and send cards a month in advance if she was going to Florida. You could also count on my mom to get to the airport 4 hours before takeoff, even before airport security, or to do carpool 2 hours before school started, or to arrive at a funeral an hour before it began. I can still hear my mom saying to my dad, "Hurry, Bernie, we'll be late." My mom was the true Finkel patriarch in every sense of the word. The glue that kept the family together and close. She created a warm and loving atmosphere in our home where we spent a great deal of time together as a family. But nothing was more special than walking into our small home on Capitol Street in Skokie with the aroma of my mom's cooking on Friday afternoon, Erev Shabbos. As the sun began to set and my mom lit the candles, the Shabbos candles, and we were all together as a family, life at the Finkel home was just perfect. I could just close my eyes and smell it, and I could feel it. My mom didn't have the same Jewish upbringing as my dad, but make no mistake, it was my mom's willingness to take the leap and her willingness to raise her family in a solidly Jewish home and send her children to day school, to Jewish day school, when they could ill afford it, that is responsible for her 3 sons, 9 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren leading Jewishly committed lives. Nothing short of a miracle in today's world. Without my mom's support for this way of life, it never would have happened. And now look, generations of Finkels that represent my mom's and my dad's legacy. The atmosphere that my mom created at our home not only brought our family together and created conversation, but also lots of storytelling and laughter. And no one, and I mean no one, could laugh like my mom. She had a great sense of humor, and she loved to laugh and had the most infectious laugh I've ever known to this day. I could close my eyes and still hear my mom's laugh, and I always will. And speaking of laughter, my mom taught us early on that at family functions, we were to go around and kiss all of the relatives. That was the Finkel ritual. until that fateful day at the summer family picnic in Central Park sometime in the mid-1960s, when my parents dropped off my brothers and me while they went and parked the car, only to return and find her 3 boys kissing people at someone else's family picnic. That is very true. We certainly got a good laugh out of that, and the ritual ended. My mother also had the patience of a saint. Sorry, Rabbi. Which is why she was such an incredible teacher. She taught library and gym, which was a natural fit because she was a terrific athlete. Very unusual for a woman at that time. She was a volleyball player, a tennis player, and a bowler, and was an avid Cubs fan. My mom used to take me to her bowling league as a young boy, and even at that age, I was in awe of her amazing sportsmanship and her form. This may well explain why my mom was a get-on-the-floor type of mother. She read with us, she played cards, board games, and other games with us. She even taught us how to play bridge. And she set the Finkel record, as you heard, for paddleball, 962 paddles at one time. But watch out for Lady Finkel at a sporting event, watching her boys or grandchildren playing baseball or basketball. Her competitive juices would come out, and sometimes she'd get into such a frenzy that we'd have to deny that we knew who she was. My mom was a wonderful and loyal friend to all who were fortunate to know her. She'd visit them when they were sick, and there was nothing that she wouldn't do for them. Everyone loved my mom, and she loved them. She was a magnet for people. Her big smile lit up every room she entered. She was very social and would know someone's life story after sitting together in the doctor's waiting room for 20 minutes. Once you met my mother, you would never forget her. And once my mother met you, she would never forget you. Even in her later years, we'd marvel at my mom's ability to recall people she hadn't seen since grammar school, and they remembered her. They would say my mom had the same beautiful face and smile she had years earlier. My mom loved life and was always up for anything. She used to famously say, "My bags are packed, I'm ready to go anywhere, just tell me when." And she meant it. When she was 80, she and my dad traveled to Israel for their great-nephew's bar mitzvah. When she was in her 70s, she and my dad hopped on a plane to New York to watch our son Brian receive a special award. Locally, Leslie and my brothers and I used to take my mom to casinos, where she loved to play roulette, and to the racetrack, where she would pore over the race card before betting on each and every race. My mom also loved to go to Ravinia and croon out the tunes with the best of them. One year, when she was in her 80s, Leslie and I took her to see Barry Manilow at the Chicago Theater, where she did not sit down the entire show. We were exhausted just watching her. My mom just loved life, and she just loved to laugh. My mom had a rare combination of sensitivity and strength. While she was an incredibly warm and compassionate person, she was also strong and resilient. An example of this occurred when we took my folks to Las Vegas to celebrate my dad's 80th birthday. Within hours of arriving, my mom tripped over a terribly placed speed bump and broke her shoulder in 3 places. Rather than having immediate surgery to repair her shoulder, my mom refused. She refused to end the celebration, and she refused to shortchange my dad. So she had the doctors wrap up her shoulder, and despite the incredible pain that she was enduring, she spent the next 4 days in a wheelchair, going with us to shows, dinners, the pool, and casinos. What grit and determination, but that was my mom. My mom was a devoted daughter to my grandparents and a devoted daughter-in-law to my Bubby and Zadie. I witnessed firsthand what it truly means to honor one's mother and father. My mom would have both sets of grandparents over almost every Sunday, even though it meant picking them up and taking them back because they didn't drive. I also watched as my mother visited my grandmother almost every day when she was in nursing home, even after a grueling day at work. She also helped my Bubby, her mother-in-law, after my bubby had a stroke, and the list goes on. I simply can't think of a better role model for my brothers and me. And speaking of role models, while my mom and dad were different from each other in many ways, they were so together in raising their family and on all of the important things in life. They were drawn to each other by their love of their parents and family, Judaism, athletics, and traditional values. My brothers and I always felt the love and commitment my folks had for each other and for us, and that love carried us through life and carried them through the trials and tribulations of life. My mother was also a role model as a grandmother and great-grandmother. She adored her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they loved their bubby. Even after many grandchildren moved out of Chicago, they kept in touch with their bubby. Living in Israel never stopped Brian from calling my mom every week before Shabbos, and then seeing her as the first order of business when he visited Chicago. My mom took great interest in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, even later in life. Yes, their bubby made them feel very special, and they made her feel very special. Our sages teach us that there are three crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of kingship. But the crown of a good name surpasses them all. My mom spent a lifetime earning the esteem and respect and love of everyone who had the good fortune to know her. Her good name and her legacy will live on forever. My mom touched the lives of everyone in this room and well beyond. While she may be physically gone, a piece of her beautiful soul and everything she stood for lives in each of us. She taught us so much about how to look at life and how to live life. And for that, my family and I will be eternally grateful. Mom, you have truly made the present world a better place by your presence. And I have absolutely no doubt that you are now making the next world, Olam Haba, a better place with Dad. I love you so much.
To know my bubby was to love her. My bubby didn't have a bad bone in her body. She never had an ulterior motive. I never heard her utter a bad word or even a substitute for one. My bubby was a throwback to a bygone era who couldn't understand the evil in today's world. She never judged others or pretended to be someone she wasn't. My grandmother was an absolute knockout in her younger years, but nothing she did or said ever gave the slightest hint that she knew it. Professionally, she spent 25 years as a gym teacher and library teacher where she valued making each student's life just a little better regardless of the homes they came from. She took such pride in receiving thank you letters from former students. I always considered how much of an impact she must have made to receive those thank you letters as a gym and library teacher. I particularly enjoyed joining her one school day as a young child and watching her in action. I love learning all about the musical instruments she used to play and the various sports she excelled at. She wasn't just an athlete, but a cheerleader's cheerleader. She could be counted on to be a vocal member of the sidelines at every one of my sporting events, of which there were many, where she was either the best friend or the worst enemy of the umpire or referee at any given time. She had a soft spot for the Cubbies, always hoping that this season would be different. We joked that she was part Cherokee with her striking Cubs bleacher tans. When some of her grandchildren vended at the ballpark, she used to coordinate with them and ask them to duck behind home plate in the sixth inning so that she could see them on TV. My bubby Métis was the embodiment of an Ashes Chayil, a woman of valor, and a matriarch in the truest sense of the word. She set the tone with her words and actions and lived as a shining example for others to emulate. I learned a lot from her. She taught me that being a true friend requires action. She had a legion of friends that she was always on the phone with and celebrating with personalized cards and letters. She taught me the importance of family. She worked so hard to bring the entire family together, which could be very challenging with a growing family and countless competing schedules and priorities. but she always made it clear where the priorities should lie, and everything was a reason to celebrate. She taught me what it meant to be a bubby, how to drown guests in food, and then leave them feeling guilty for not having room for a fifth helping. And for the record, the mashed potatoes, which were potentially more margarine than potato, never needed finishing when I was around. My bubby taught me how to take an active role in supporting organizations. She was a partner in my Zadie's countless volunteer efforts, such as co-founding two Skokie Shoals, or Torah and Skokie Valley Mechitza Minyan, as well as co-founding the Skokie chapter of Religious Zionists of Chicago and serving as vice president or president for all of these organizations, including Hillel Torah and Ida Crown. She was honored for her own work for the Skokie Valley Sisterhood, where she chaired many committees, as well as by the Religious Zionists of Chicago and the Jewish United Fund. She served as a PTA officer for Hillel Torah, was a member of the Ida Crown Board of Directors, and a member of Hadassah. She taught me how to celebrate Judaism with true love, and I have fond memories of her waving at us from the other side of the Mechitza and Shul, so proud of her grandchildren sitting beside Zadie during davening. She taught me how to love ice cream, especially as a meal substitute. Even as a kid, I noticed how the ice cream bowls were always larger than the salad bowls. She taught me how to love big, cheer loud, and hug to hurt. I will miss her striking eyes, her warm smile, and absolutely contagious laughter. So many times the table would be laughing because of her, only to stop just long enough so we could actually find out why she was laughing, which would initiate an entirely new round of laughter. I will miss her pronunciation of things like suki and matzi, the way she described hugging someone, taking them around, and even some of her made-up word conjugations. I will miss her stories and jokes that left out the punchline. I will miss sharing a wedding anniversary with her. I will miss singing Zemirat with her. I will miss her endlessly showering her great-grandchildren with books and candy and attention. I will miss driving with her where the speed limit was simply a suggestion. She was the richest person in the world because she always appreciated what she had and never wanted for anything. A hug was truly more valuable to her than all of the money in the world. Today we celebrate a life well lived and a life we should strive to emulate. Her legacy is now ours to perpetuate.
I speak on behalf of my wife, Becca, and Brian, who's in Israel and couldn't make it, unfortunately. Growing up with Bubby in your corner meant that you always had home field advantage, as you heard, because she was a one-woman personal cheering section. From a time we learned to swing a bat, all umpires were effectively put on notice. If the ump made a bad call, if the coach had the temerity to take us out of a game, an unbraiding from Bubby was all but assured. Bubby's fierce loyalty to her family, coupled with her passion for sports, made her the kind of grandmother and matriarch that all of the Finkel grandchildren could appreciate and love. While other grandmothers were playing canasta or mahjong, Bubby, a PE major, former gym teacher, and lifelong Cubs fan, was busy talking Chicago sports. I had the pleasure of watching many Cubs and Bears games with her. Unfortunately, not a great outcome. Bubby was by all accounts a smart, accomplished, and impressive woman who was ahead of her time in many ways. She was a college graduate attending DePaul University during a time which very few women attended college. She was also a multi-sport athlete in an era before women's sports entered the mainstream. She was also one of the few Jewish white Chicago public school teachers who continued to commute into some of the city's most dangerous neighborhoods well into her 60s to help mentor underprivileged children and give every child a chance. But most of all, Bubby was a wonderful partner to Zadie, alav shalom, a terrific mother, an incredible grandmother, great-grandmother, and a role model for us all. Bubby was a straight shooter. There was no tolerance for anything that wasn't straight. She was a strong woman who always spoke her mind and never hesitated to share her hard-earned life lessons and philosophy with us. But she always did so with an old-fashioned kindness and graciousness that seems so tragically rare nowadays. Like her late husband, she never talked bad, she never used a curse word, gossip, or spoke ill of any other individual. And she exuded warmth and generosity wherever she went. On a personal note, I got to know Bubby many years ago, she always, without an exception, made sure to welcome me and the family and ask at every single occasion, without exception, how my parents were doing, how are my siblings, how are my grandparents. Bubby was not raised in a religiously observant family. When she married Zadie, she enthusiastically embraced an Orthodox lifestyle and became a fixture in the Skokie Jewish community along with her husband. While Zadie certainly deserves his fair share of credit for raising multiple generations of Jewishly observant and engaged Finkels and extended family, he couldn't have done it without Bubby. He could not have embraced a more traditional lifestyle. The fact that she has over a dozen from great-grandchildren and grandchildren is a testament to her commitment to Jewish traditional values and community. Of all Bubby's many famous sayings, the one that sticks with me the most that you heard already is, "You gotta teach kids." I heard it personally on many accounts. Anyone knows how my father-in-law or my uncles turned out knows that she was a really good mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and she practiced what she preached. She was also fond of saying that good parents didn't need to brag about their children because their kids' values and actions spoke for themselves. Again, Bubby didn't stand on ceremony. She simply had solid values and actually lived by them. In a world that is increasingly cynical, fast-paced, unnecessarily complex, Bubby always kept it simple in her own wholesome way, and her kids, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are all beneficiaries of her legacy. I'll end, this is from Brian, on a more personal note. When Brian was starting his business, Devash, and looking to fundraise, Bubby and Zadie were among his first backers, even though, as you heard, they weren't materially wealthy people, and he didn't approach them for an investment. That they found out somehow that he needed some money to get off the ground and insisted on investing a small sum that was essential to helping him get his company off the ground. But while the funding was certainly helpful, the thing that inspired Brian the most about their investment was the knowledge that they still believed and supported him after all these years. The same Bubby who harassed umpires at all the Little League games was still fully behind him, only now instead of sports, it was entrepreneurship. When I come back to visit them, they greet him at the airport decked in their company-branded Devash t-shirts, and Brian would bring Bubby around to all the local grocery stores, Mariano's, Jewel's, Sarah's Tent, to name a few, to see the products on the shelf. The nachas they felt was palatable, and the knowledge they were invested in his success and growth, even as he approaches mid-30s, is something that will always stay with him forever. Bubby, we miss you and love you more than you can possibly know. Please give Zadie a huge hug and kiss from us.
Bubby touched everybody that she knew and everybody that she interacted with. Whether it was the bakery department at the Jewel on Howard, where they always ask me how my Bubby is doing, or whether it's the secretaries at the Chicago Public Schools where I used to work, and they ask me how she's doing. She had an impact on everyone. To Bubby, family was very important. She always wanted to be prepared and be early to things, whether it was coming to games or coming to family events, or having Moose Track ice cream for my father, or always having A&W root beer for me in her fridge because she knew that that was my favorite. Some of my favorite memories of Bubby was when we would get together for a block party on Capitol Street, or when we had a surprise birthday party for her at Uncle Cal's, and she came in, and for her, she burst into tears because that's who Bubby was. Family was very important to her. As Uncle Norm said, Bubby used to give good luck dollars to him. Bubby continued that tradition with me, whether it was before going off to Rutgers or before any life event. Bubby was always there for you, and she was early. Bubby's greatest regret in this life is that she will now be referred to as the late Métis Finkel. She was never late for anything, and she will hate to know that she is now the late Métis Finkel.
As we conclude the service for Mady, I want to also recognize rabbis. Rabbi Gelman is here, and Rabbi Posner. We'll ask Rabbi Posner to say the Kol Mole. Please rise.
It's here. I don't know. El Mole Rachamim, Shechein, Bamiraimim, Haven't Semen Nuchan al Kanfei Ashchina, Bemailes, Kadeshim, Utahirim, Kazair, Hazakia Masirim, Es Nishmas, Meta Bas, Bdevber, Halevi, Shaholcha Lelama, Bavur, Shanachnu Spalum Batas Goddess Shmasa, Baganedin Tahindish Menuchasa, Lachim Balarachim, Yastireha, Besaser Knaf of Leilamim, Vietzer, Betsarachim Stishmasa, Adonai hu nachalasa, v'sanduach hu shalom amishkava, v'neimar, Amen. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper repose on the sheltering wings of your presence, and the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, onto the soul of Meta, the daughter of Devber Halevi, who has gone to her world, and for whose memory we pray. May her repose be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring her under the cover of God's wings and bind her soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be her heritage. May she repose on her resting place in peace, and let us respond. Amen.
You may be seated for a moment. This concludes the funeral here at the chapel. The interment will take place at West Lawn Cemetery. For those who will be driving to the cemetery, we ask that you line up in our parking lot to have your headlights and hazard lights on while in the procession. We'll be replacing a magnetic flag on your vehicle, and drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you. At the conclusion of the interment, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Finkel residence, 8636 Keeler in Skokie. There are times for minyanim and at times when the family would like no visitors. That information is on the service folder that you received when you arrived, and for those that have joined us virtually, it's on our website that you joined the Zoom. If we can have everybody please rise and have the grandsons and Howie come forward as act as pallbearers. And once we have left the chapel, we ask everybody to go immediately to their vehicles. Ladies and gentlemen, would you gather over here in the shade?
We'll just say one thing. As a custom, Hasidic custom, you ask forgiveness on behalf of the family and the children and the grandchildren. Everyone tried the hardest to make her life maybe so special, but if in some way something was done improper, it's a custom to ask forgiveness, and she should be a good to better for the whole mishpacha. We'll now do the actual, the biggest chesed we can do is actually do the kvura. It's called chesed shel emes. It's a kindness of truth because a person can never pay back. If you're able to, do it, and you shouldn't pass the shovel from person to person. It is a hot day. For those who cannot do it, I suggest.
Same link. Tell them it's the same link that was the funeral.
begin the actual kfura. For those who want to pardon it, please form a line here and we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the rabbi mentioned, for those who want to participate in the burial, they may do so from either side. It's customary not to pass the shovel from person to person. Just place the shovel back into the mound after you put earth into the grave. First couple of these children should not get it. Norm. Brian is on, I see.
She's saying the link's not working. She can't hard down her. Just one person.
I'm going to refresh your screen.
Would you join this meeting on another device?
Oh, the link is
Yeah.
probably another way.
So just go to, I would just go to our website. Okay, go back to the link that you had before. Okay, and then where's the link that you sent to? What's your phone number? Wait, 914 217 7977. Okay, try the one I just sent you. Oh, okay. Oh, congratulations. Yes, so one's me and then one is Brian. So it'll say 3 once I see the she joins.
Once it's
Oh. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Also, Anybody wants to. finishing the last, final, making a Tzuras HaKeva, I will say Tzaddik Hadin, the prayer of God is just. Hatzur Tonim Pa'olei Chol Derachah Mishpat Elam Muna Vein Avat Tzaddik Yashahur. Hatzur Tom Chol Pa'am Yemel Machativa Shal Matam Mal. Memes V'chayim Merid Shal V'yal. Hatzur Tom Chol Maisa B'yemel Matasa Emu Eisa Chesed Chin Lo Matasa. V'schus Hanechel Kaseg Shiva Asay Tzaddik Chol Derachah. Hatzur Tom Erch Paramol Rachim. Chamol No V'chus No Ala V'ysu Vonim. Ki L'chod Nastik Zorachim. Tzaddik Hadarei Lahom Atul Lahomas Lahachas Agad Chol Pekad Chol Ruchis. Chalila Chazer Chreina Lim Chais Yiyana. Enach Barachim Aleinu Kuchais. Ki L'chod No Rachma Slichais. Adam En Shana Yiyah Elef Shana Yichya. Ma Yisron Leik Loi Haya Yiyah. Baruch Dain HaEmes Memis Machaya. Baruch Hu Ki Emes Dimai V'Shalit D'Hakal Einai. U'Mashalim L'Adam Cheshbein V'Dinai. Hakal Shma Hoydaki Tehenai. Idana Nikdai Ksadik V'Shpat Decha. Tilstak V'Recha V'Tiske Shavtecha. Ein Lahara Achmedish V'Techa. Sadik Adonai Yashim V'Techa. Daina Emes V'Shoifet. Sadik V'Emes. Baruch Daina Emes. Shekol Mishpat V'Tzed V'Emes. Nefesh Kol Chai V'Decha. Sadik Mali Yimenecha Yad Charachim V'Teisa Yadcha. Seila Mal Charif Yadcha. G'dol Ha'Yitzor V'Lila. Hashenecha V'Kuchos HaKol Darchi B'nei Adam. Lasis Le'ish K'dracha V'Chifri Ma'alav. L'Hagid Ki Yashrei. Adonai Tzur V'Lala Savoy. He Nasa. Adonai Nasa V'Adonai Lakach. He Shonei Varech V'Hurach V'Kapav V'Layashis Him V'Lasha Apai. V'Layakal Chamasai. The prayer is the Lord. The rock is just. His way are perfect. We trust in God. Baruch Daina Emes. Hashem, you've given. Hashem, you've taken. May the name of Hashem be blessed. He being compassionate, pardons iniquity, does tshuva, does not destroy time and again. And He Shem Hashem Avarech. May the name of Hashem be blessed forever and ever. In a moment, we'll say Kaddish. I know. Ki leiba moisa ikach hakol ered achar kvaida ki nash b'chai varach edet chesed lach tava dar vayso anetzach lira ar adam bikva leyavin nimshot l'hevas lidmo. We'll now ask the mourners to rise. Everyone else rises also. We'll come closer to the grave. Come a little closer. Stand together, all three. Stand next to each other.
Yizkara v'yizkara shemei rabba. Yalmata hu asid l'yizkatata. Malach ya'ameh se'emus tisea. V'lashach ala nechlai. V'lamis rak hayat. V'lachei karta d'Yushalayim. V'lameha kar. V'lchana l'chra'a me'ar'ei. V'la asava. V'lchana kadisha d'ishmaya d'yasrei. V'zivei v'karei. Yisbakar Kareva Krimashifei, Zechayechon of Yomechon of Ahaydo Choves Yisrael, Vagalav Yisman Karevi Imro Amen. Yeheshvei Rabba Mavarach, Lalam Lamei Almaya, Yisbarach, Yishtabach, Yisbar, Yisramam, Yisnasei, Yisadar, Yisalav, Yisalam, Shemed, Kudusha, Reiko, Leilam, Yikag, Yachasa, Yishirasa, Tishkachasa, Vanachamasa, Damiram, Yamav, Imro Amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba Mishamaya V'Chayim Tavim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'Yimru Amen.
The last thing, the service begin now the period of Nicham Aveda mourning, and we console the mourners. We also wish the family should only have simchas and brachas, and I'm sure as your mother and your father are watching from high, I'm sure they're taking nachas, the beautiful joy in the family, and you should only know good, achayv, the chesed, chal hayamim, only good and kindness and comfort all the days of your life. We'll now make the shura, the traditional aisle. We'll ask men on one side, women on the other. Maybe the woman can stay here, and the men should move to this side. The moment the mourners walk through, and we'll comfort them as they walk through.
As the rabbi mentioned, we'll form a shura leading away from the grave, and the immediate mourners will walk through. Where's your aunt?
Renee. Nachem Eschem, Besoich Shar Avele Tzion Yerushalayim. Hamakom Yenachem Eschem, Besoich Shar Avele Tzion Yerushalayim. Hamakom Yenachem Eschem, Besoich Shar Avele Tzion Yerushalayim.